The fluorescent lights above the gas station buzzed like angry wasps as I pulled into the empty parking lot. 11:47 p.m. My hands shook as I turned off the engine. Not from nerves, but from the 3 energy drinks I'd chugged to stay alert for my first night shift. The pay was too good to be true. $25 an hour to work alone at a gas station in the middle of nowhere, Texas. But with mom's medical bills piling up and my last job laying me off, I couldn't afford to ask why. Let me back up a bit. My name is Marcus Rivera, and 6 months ago, I thought I had my life figured out. I'd graduated from UT Austin with a degree in business management, landed what I thought was a solid job at a marketing firm in the city, and was making decent money for a 22-year-old. I was even saving up to move out of mom's house and get my own place. Then everything fell apart at once. First, the marketing firm went under. Something about embezzlement and tax fraud. I never got the full story. All I knew was that one Friday I had a job, and the following Monday I was standing in the unemployment line with 40 other confused former employees. That same week, Mom started complaining about headaches. Just stress, she kept saying, popping aspirin like candy. But the headaches got worse, and then came the dizzy spells, the confusion. The morning she couldn't remember how to work the coffee maker she'd used for 15 years. The diagnosis was a brain tumor. Aggressive, inoperable, and expensive as hell to treat. Even with insurance, we were looking at hundreds of thousands in medical bills. Experimental treatments, medications that cost more per month than most people make in a year. Specialists who charged consultation fees that maxed out credit cards. I applied for every job I could find. Retail, food service, office work, manual labor, anything that would pay. But the job market was brutal, and most places were offering minimum wage with no benefits. I was getting desperate, staying up until 3 a.m. scrolling through job boards when I found the posting that changed everything. Night shift cashier, $25 per hour, immediate start, rural Texas location. It seemed too good to be true, but when you're watching your mother waste away while medical bills pile up like snowdrifts, you don't ask too many questions. The glass doors reflected my nervous smile as I approached. 22 years old, fresh out of Austin, and desperate enough to take any job that paid decent money. The previous manager had been oddly enthusiastic about hiring me on the spot, barely glancing at my resume. Night shift's where the real money is, she'd said with a strange smile. Just remember, customer service is everything, no matter who walks through that door. Patricia Hernandez had been her name, mid-40s with graying hair and eyes that seemed to see more than they let on. During my brief training shift the day before, she'd shown me the basics, how to work the register, where the cleaning supplies were kept, how to handle the lottery machine that looked older than I was. But there had been odd moments during training, like when she'd shown me the security system and mentioned, almost casually, that sometimes the cameras didn't work properly at night. Technical glitches, she'd said with a shrug. Corporate knows about it, but you know how these things go. Budget constraints. Or when she'd walked me through the employee break room and pointed out a thick binder of company policies. Most of it's standard stuff, she'd said, but there are some specific protocols for the night shift. things about how to handle unusual situations. I'd asked what she meant by unusual, and she'd given me that strange smile again. You'll see, Nightshift gets all kinds of customers, travelers, locals, people just passing through. Some of them might seem a little different. The important thing is to stay professional and not ask too many questions. I pushed inside, the electronic chime echoing in the empty store. Rows of snacks cast long shadows under the harsh lighting. The Slurpee machine hummed in the corner, its blue and red glow painting the walls in eerie colors. Behind the counter, a small TV played static filled local news about missing persons in rural counties. The store felt different at night than it had during my training. Larger, somehow, with corners that seemed to stretch back farther than they should. The fluorescent lights flickered occasionally, casting shifting shadows that moved in ways that didn't quite make sense. There was a persistent humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I'd arrived early, wanting to make a good impression, so I used the extra time to familiarize myself with the layout. The store was bigger than it looked from outside, with long aisles that seemed to go on forever. The back section, where the beer coolers were, felt significantly colder than the rest of the store, and I noticed that several of the security cameras were pointed at odd angles, not at the register or entrance like you'd expect, but at empty corners and doorways that led to storage areas. You must be the new guy. I spun around, heart jumping into my throat. A wiry man in his 50s stood by the coffee station, wearing a faded 7-Eleven uniform. His name tag read Eddie. Dark circles hung under his eyes like bruises, and his hands trembled slightly as he poured coffee into a thermos. He'd appeared so silently that I hadn't heard him come in. No door chime, no footsteps, nothing. One moment I was alone, and the next he was there, moving through the store like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Yeah, I'm Marcus. You training me tonight? Eddie's laugh was bitter, a sound without humor. Training? Kid, there ain't much to train. Ring up customers, keep the coffee fresh, restock when it's quiet. He paused, studying my face with sharp, intelligent eyes. You from around here? Austin. Just moved out here last week. Austin. Eddie nodded slowly, like that explained everything. City boy, that explains it. He screwed the lid on his thermos, the metal thread squeaking in the quiet store. Listen, Marcus, mind if I call you Marcus? There's some things about this job they don't put in the employee handbook. I pulled out my phone to take notes, still trying to be the perfect employee. Okay, shoot. First rule, customer service is everything. Smile, be polite, ring them up, send them on their way. Don't ask questions. Don't make conversation, unless they start it first. Eddie moved closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Second rule, if someone comes in wearing clothes that don't match the weather, just do your job. Don't mention it. What do you mean? I mean, if it's 90 degrees outside and someone walks in wearing a heavy winter coat, or if it's freezing and they're in shorts and a t-shirt, you just smile and ring them up. You don't ask if they're hot or cold. You don't comment on their clothes. You understand? I nodded, though I didn't understand at all. I was thinking maybe he meant homeless people or folks with mental health issues. I had no idea what he was really warning me about. Third rule, and this is important: between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., you might get some unusual calls on the store phone. Let it ring, don't answer it. The answering machine will pick up after 6 rings. What kind of calls? Eddie's jaw tightened, and for a moment he looked genuinely frightened. The kind you don't want to take. He picked up his thermos and headed for the door, then stopped and turned back. Oh, and Marcus, if you see me during your shift, don't talk to me. I work days. I shouldn't be here at night. The electronic chime played as Eddie left, and I was alone. I stood there for a moment, processing what had just happened. Eddie's warnings had been specific and urgent, delivered with a kind of intensity that made it clear he wasn't joking around. But they also made no sense. Why would customers be wearing weather inappropriate clothing? Why would I get strange phone calls during a specific hour? And why would Eddie tell me not to talk to him if I saw him again? The first few hours passed quietly, giving me time to settle into the routine and convince myself that Eddie was just one of those paranoid small town types. A trucker bought coffee and beef jerky, complaining about the heat and the long drive ahead of him. He was normal, tired, grateful for the caffeine and the air conditioning. A woman in scrubs grabbed an energy drink, heading home from her hospital shift at the county medical center. She looked exhausted, probably pulling a double, and barely made eye contact as she paid. Normal people doing normal things. I began to relax, scrolling through my phone between customers, thinking that maybe this job would just be boring overnight cashier work with unusually good pay. Around 2 a.m., I got a text from Mom. Can't sleep, worried about the bills. How's the new job? Love you, mijo. I texted back, going well so far. Don't worry about the bills. We'll figure it out. Get some rest. But her message reminded me why I was here, why I'd driven 3 hours from Austin to work in the middle of nowhere. The experimental treatment she needed cost $8,000 a month, not counting the other medications and supportive care. At $25 an hour, this job could actually make a difference. At 2:30 a.m., a man in a heavy winter coat walked in. The temperature outside was still in the 80s. I could feel the heat radiating off the asphalt every time the automatic doors opened. But this customer moved through the store like the coat was perfectly normal, selecting a bag of chips and a bottle of water with deliberate, practiced movements. Up close, I could see the man's breath fogging slightly in the warm air. His skin had a pale, waxy quality that reminded me of old candles, and his eyes seemed too dark in the fluorescent light, like pools of black water. The winter coat itself looked expensive, but old-fashioned, the kind of thing you might see in a photograph from the 1950s. Just these, the man said, setting his items on the counter. His voice sounded distant, like it was coming from underwater or through several layers of glass. I forced a smile, remembering Eddie's warning about not commenting on customers' appearance. That'll be $3.47. The man handed me exact change. The coins were ice cold against my palm, so cold they almost burned. I could feel the chill spreading up my arms from where the metal touched my skin. Have a good night, I said, bagging the items with hands that were starting to shake slightly. You too. The man paused at the door and looked back at me. Nice and quiet in here. Perfect for thinking. There was something in the way he said it that made my skin crawl, like he was talking about something other than the peaceful atmosphere of the store. After he left, I noticed my own breath was visible in the air. The temperature had dropped at least 20 degrees in the past few minutes. I checked the thermostat, still set to 72. The air conditioning wasn't even running, but somehow the entire store had become noticeably colder. I looked at the security monitor to see if I could spot where the man had gone, but the parking lot was empty. His car was nowhere to be seen, despite the fact that he had only left seconds ago. It was like he had simply vanished into the night. That's when I started to get really scared. At 3:17 a.m., the phone rang. The sound was jarring in the quiet store, and I remembered Eddie's warning about not answering calls between 3 and 4 a.m. I let it ring, counting each tone 6 times. Then the answering machine clicked on. Instead of the usual business message, a child's voice filled the store. Daddy, are you coming home? I'm scared, Daddy. They're in my room again. The voice was clear and desperate, the kind of terror that cuts right through you. I'd never heard that voice before, but something about it seemed familiar. Like a memory from a dream you can't quite remember. The message ended with a click that seemed to echo in the empty store. I stared at the phone, my heart racing. Every instinct told me I should have answered, should have tried to help whoever was calling. The phone rang again immediately. This time, it was a woman sobbing. Please, someone help me. I can't get out. I can't get out. The doors won't open and they're coming closer. The desperation in her voice was overwhelming. I reached for the phone, my hand moving automatically toward the receiver. But Eddie's warning stopped me. Don't answer no matter what you hear. I forced myself to let it go to the machine, standing there listening to a woman beg for help that I couldn't give. A third call came through. Hello? Is anyone there? This is Sarah from the Nightshift. If you can hear this, don't come to work. Don't come to work. They're not customers. They're not. The line went dead with a harsh click. My hand shook as I checked the employee schedule posted behind the counter. I went through every piece of paperwork Patricia had left, every roster and timesheet I could find. There was no Sarah listed. According to the schedule, the night shift had been empty for 3 weeks before I was hired. But her voice had sounded so real, so immediate. She'd known about the job, about the customers not being what they seemed. Either someone was playing an elaborate prank, or I was listening to messages from someone who had worked here, but had been erased from all official records. At 3:45 a.m., Eddie walked in. He looked exactly the same as before. Faded uniform, tired eyes, thermos in hand. But Eddie had said he worked days. Eddie had said if I saw him at night, don't talk to him. Evening, Marcus, Eddie said, moving toward the coffee station, like nothing unusual was happening. How's your first night going? I didn't respond. I watched him pour coffee into his thermos, going through the exact same motions as before. But this time I paid closer attention, and I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Eddie wasn't casting a reflection. in the curved security mirror above the coffee station. Cat got your tongue? Eddie asked, screwing on the lid. You look like you've seen a ghost. My mouth was dry as dust. You said you work days. I do work days. Worked them for 15 years. Eddie turned to face me, and his expression was sad, but resigned. But I also worked nights. 3 years of night shifts before you showed up. Before Sarah. Before Tommy. Before Jenny. What happened to them? Same thing that happens to everyone who works the night shift too long. Eddie's face was sad but resigned, like he was discussing something as inevitable as the weather. They become part of the place, part of the routine. We all do, eventually. I don't understand. You will, give it time. Eddie headed for the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. Marcus, the pay is good because they need someone behind that counter. Someone alive. Someone who can still interact with the real world during the day. But at night, he shrugged. At night, the boundaries get thin. And they need us to help maintain the illusion. Who's they? The ones who wear the wrong clothes, the ones who call the phone, the ones who come in here looking for something they lost a long time ago. Eddie's hand was on the door handle, but he didn't open it yet. We used to be like you, Marcus, alive, worried about bills and family and the future. But this place, it holds on to things. People, memories, and eventually it holds on to us too. I felt cold dread settling in my stomach like a stone. How long do I have? Depends. Some people last a few months. Others, like Sarah, only made it 3 weeks. Eddie's smile was genuinely sympathetic, like he really did feel sorry for me. But here's the thing, kid. You don't have to stay. You can walk out that door right now and never come back. But the job, there'll be other jobs, other opportunities, but if you stay, if you keep working these night shifts, you'll end up like me, like Sarah, like all the others. Eddie pushed open the door, and I could see the pre-dawn darkness beyond. The choice is yours, Marcus. But make it soon. Dawn's coming, and once you make it through your first full shift, it gets harder to leave. The electronic chime played as Eddie left for the second time that night. I stood alone in the store, processing everything I'd learned. The high pay that had seemed too good to be true. The strange customers who didn't show up on security cameras. The phone calls from people who shouldn't exist. The way Eddie had no reflection. The way he talked about being trapped here with the others. It all made a horrible kind of sense. I thought about Mom's medical bills, about my empty bank account, about how desperately I needed this job. But I also thought about Sarah's voice on the answering machine, about the terror in her words, about Eddie's sad resignation and the way he'd said we all do eventually. What was I really trading for that $25 an hour? And was any amount of money worth becoming trapped in this fluorescent lit purgatory? At 4:30 a.m., a family walked in. Parents and 2 young children. They were dressed in clothes from decades past. The fabric faded and worn, but somehow pristine. The children's eyes were too old for their faces, holding a sadness that seemed to span generations. And when they spoke, their voices echoed strangely in the small space. "Excuse me," the mother said, approaching the counter with a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "We're looking for the highway. We seem to have gotten lost." I stared at them, recognizing all the signs Eddie had warned me about: the outdated clothing, the strange quality to their voices, the way they seemed slightly out of focus around the edges. These weren't customers, they were something else, something that had been lost for a very long time. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I can't help you." The family looked at each other sadly, their faces reflecting a confusion that went beyond simple misunderstanding. They turned and walked back out into the night, moving with that same gliding motion I'd noticed in the man with the winter coat. At 5:45 a.m., the real sunrise began to paint the horizon pink and gold. I had made my decision. I wrote a note and left it on the counter. I quit. "Thanks for the opportunity, but this isn't the right fit for me." Marcus. As I walked toward my car, I felt a strange mixture of emotions: shock at what I'd experienced. My entire understanding of reality had been fundamentally altered in the space of one night. Gratitude that I'd survived the night and had the chance to leave, unlike Sarah and Tommy and the others who'd stayed too long. Confusion about what it all meant, what those people were, what would happen to the next person desperate enough to take the job. But mostly, I felt relief. Overwhelming, flooding relief that I was walking away while I still could. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. A text from an unknown number. "Good choice, kid. Take care of yourself. Eddie." I looked back at the gas station one last time. In the morning light, it looked normal. Just another 7-Eleven store on a quiet highway in rural Texas. But I knew the truth now. I knew what happened when the sun went down and the boundaries between worlds grew thin. I drove away as the sun rose higher, already planning my next job search. Something with day shifts only. Something normal. Behind me, the gas station stood empty, waiting for the next desperate soul to answer its help wanted ad. The cycle would continue, as it always had. But I wouldn't be part of it. I'd chosen to leave while I still could. The fluorescent lights flickered once in my rearview mirror, then went dark. That was 8 months ago. I never did find another job that paid as well as that night shift, but I found other ways to help Mom with her medical bills, fundraising, charity programs, a clinical trial that covered most of her treatment costs. It was harder, took longer, required swallowing my pride and asking for help from family and friends. But Mom's treatment worked. The experimental therapy put her cancer into remission, and she's doing well now, back to gardening and complaining about politics on Facebook. Normal, wonderful, living person problems. Sometimes I wonder about whoever took that job after me. I wonder if they listened to Eddie's warnings or if they're still there, slowly becoming part of the place. I wonder if Eddie is still trying to warn new employees, still trapped in that fluorescent lit limbo between life and death. I've seen the job posting 3 more times since then, always with a different manager's name, always promising the same impossible pay. Each time, I think about calling to warn them. But who would believe a story like this?